Om Jnanativedandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshulanmaditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him. So there was once a man named Mark. Anybody named Mark here? All right. No, you're not Mark. Come on. He's not Mark. He's messing around. You're Connor. So anyways, there's a man named Mark Saltzman, and he grew up in the Bay Area, and he was living with his parents as a young child, and then growing up there as a teenager, and he was struggling. Maybe you could say like any other teenager. No offense to teenagers. If anybody's a teenager, no offense. But it can be kind of a confusing time. That's my experience and the experience of many people I've talked to. Confusing, troublesome time, kind of searching for oneself, searching for some type of identity. Of course, that search for identity could continue into our 20s and 30s and on, but especially teenager years seem to be a little challenging sometimes. So he was searching for himself, and he was also dealing with living with his parents. So his parents, one of the parents' name, I mean, not that this absolutely matters, the name of the parents, but anyways, I'll tell you the name. But parents were Joe and Mary. So the mother, she was super positive, energetic, what do they call the opposite of a pessimistic? Optimistic, yeah, there you go. Very optimistic about life and happy, so much to do, so many instruments to learn, so many things to see in the world, just very happy, energetic person. Whereas the father was quite the opposite, pessimistic. It's an ugly world, and I'm miserable, and they say misery loves company. Make other people's miserable as well. But just a very, miserable, bored, unsatisfied person. So that was the father. So within human nature, speaking about human nature now, our upbringing means our family, where we were born, so on. Whether we like it or not, it has a very intense effect on us. Even just being born of certain parents. Part of the parents' mentality is actually, the mother is actually transferred to us. We get some of the traits of our parents. So he was himself, he had these two natures within him, pessimistic and optimistic, right? But he had somehow or other, he had a leaning toward the pessimistic side. But he really didn't want to be like that. He wanted to be more like his mother. And don't worry, we're getting to some, there'll be points along the main point that I'm going to make, but so he really wanted to avoid being like his father at all cost. So, because, I mean, sometimes when people get older, sometimes it happens when they're a little younger, their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. Sometimes there's a tendency to kind of, the life in their eyes seems to dwindle a little bit. In other words, a lot of people, they're very attracted to, if a baby walks into the door, a lot of people, the baby will catch everyone's attention. Oh, look, look how cute the baby is, right? Or a young toddler or something. A lot of people are just naturally attracted, or because there's a childlike simplicity, that a young child has, right? The eyes are full of life. Whereas sometimes when we get older, we kind of lose that and maybe we become more filled with anxiety and dealing with the frustrations of this world, and we lose it. You could say maybe that childlike purity, maybe, if you want to say it like that. So this young teenager, what's his name again? Mark, yes. Mark, he didn't want to be like that. He didn't want to live a boring, unsatisfied, miserable life like his father. He didn't want that. So, therefore, he was searching. And he started to, you could say, enter into different realms of thought, different realms of activity, searching for himself. So he first started off with a kind of like he accepted him as a bit of a guru, like a martial art artist. Is it called martial artist? Yeah, martial art, a teacher, right? Teaching martial arts. And but over time, he realized that this teacher that was teaching the martial arts was just as, you could say, lost as his father. Very, very full of vice and full of, he describes it, Mark, as he was a borderline, what do you call that when somebody, sorry, I was traveling, I'm still kind of recovering. My brain is, and I've been busy since I got back, but, so you call that somebody who loses their, loses their sense of empathy and, what's that word? Huh? Sociopath. There you go, sociopath. What did he say? Huh? Okay. Yeah. I was thinking of the word sociopath. Means a person just loses their sense of conscience. They could do any, of course, nowadays it could be seen sometimes, okay, what's good, what's bad. But we could describe some things here, which we won't describe here, that I suspect that everybody would think are just absolutely terrible, but we don't have to get into that. So when somebody becomes a sociopath, they'll just do anything that's just completely harmful, right, to others. So this martial artist, who this Mark was accepting as kind of a guru, he started displaying this kind of sociopath tendencies. And then Mark said, all right, I'm out of here, and he left him. So then he was on for another search. So then he started getting to the realm of intoxication, drugs and different types of drugs. And he started off with smoking weed. Now, of course, back then when, Mark was going through all of this, the smoking of weed was illegal. Now it's not, right? Kind of, anyways, I don't know if it brings the excitement out of it, right? You're not doing anything illegal anymore, but when we were growing up, it was illegal, anyways. So, so he started getting into that, right? Getting high as much as possible. And then his younger brother, one day they were sitting at the dinner table, and Mark's younger brother, he's looking at a book, different plants, and he's looking at a marijuana plant, and the young brother says in front of his father, in front of him and Mark's father, "Oh, this looks like the plant in our backyard," So kind of, what do you call, huh? Yeah, got burned by his younger brother. Got busted. So his father kind of, So then he stopped. Now, of course, a lot of people, they're not going to stop just because their father tells them to. But anyways, in this case, Mark did. He stopped. So kind of lost his attraction. So then he was a good student, so he was accepted into Harvard, University. And while there, he wanted to meet a very famous professor. So this is all in the course of years, obviously. We're kind of. So he wanted to meet this very famous professor. So this professor was said to be super intelligent and a knower of so many different spiritual traditions. So he went to this professor and started to talk to him and ask him certain questions. What does it mean when it says this in this Buddhist text and this text from India? What does it all mean? So he's asking some very specific questions, philosophical questions. And to his unsatisfaction, to his dislike, the professor couldn't answer the questions. When you go to a teacher, you expect them to answer the questions. Sometimes people have that experience when they go to spiritual people or they go to spiritual traditions or spiritual groups and they ask some questions and then there's kind of like no answer. I remember I took a world religions class one time. And when I was, I think, 18 years old at community college, Cuyamaca College here in San Diego. And anyways, the different representatives of the different religions would come in and give their different talks. So I remember I asked one of them a question. And I wasn't trying to be challenging, but it kind of came off as challenging. And then when I asked that question, the whole classroom became really quiet, And then he said something which didn't exactly answer my question, and then they ended the class, So I wasn't happy, with his answer. So anyways, that's my experience, and that's sometimes people's experience. We're not very satisfied with the answers we get. So Mark was not satisfied. So then he asked this professor, he was like dying to be happy. He said, I want to be happy like you, because he was seeing this professor as somebody who was happy. I want to be happy like you. So what do I have to do? What's the difference between you and me? And this professor said, well, about 40 years of, practice. And then Mark's like, 40 years, you're telling me I got to wait 40 years, to be happy? That doesn't sound so good, So he went into this just complete destructive, he dropped out of Harvard and went into this completely destructive mindset. And then eventually he went home to his father, Joe. And his father was, like the tinker in the garage, making whatever he was doing, making little cars or something. People do all types of stuff. His little hobby or something. So then, looking very, miserable. And so then Mark, the son, went up to the father, and he started telling his father his whole experiences over the last so many years. He said, I tried to be happy by, accepting this martial artist as some type of guru, and I got into the drug culture, and then I went to Harvard, and I met this professor, and this and that. And he was going through the whole thing. He said, none of it worked. I'm still not happy. And then his father, in his very kind of monotone, depressing voice, said, he put his hand in his pocket and he got the keys out and he handed the keys to his son and he said, welcome home, son. And it was like a moment of, like the mask of Mark's father, the miserable mask of Mark's father just, hardened on his face, Mark's face. So he had to just accept, this is just how it is. It's just, I'm just destined to live a, miserable life. And this is coming from a book, by the way, 1995. The book was entitled Lost in Place, Growing Up Absurd in Suburbia. So, and what does that mean, lost in place? It means that this is a bit of a autobiography. So Mark was explaining that, what does this mean, lost in place? It means that Mark and his father, Joe, they're both lost, but they share the same place, right? They share the same place. So lost in place. Growing up absurd in suburbia, just, some suburb of Bay Area or whatever. And the conclusion of the book was more or less that. Just try to eke some happiness out this way or that way, but more or less, it's not looking so great, right? So, but we don't have to live like that. We shouldn't live like that. Life is meant to be, dynamic. Life is meant to be full of happiness and joy and all the other positive things we want. But that requires, at least from the perspective of the Bhagavad Gita and other books, it requires that we don't give up. That's the problem. That Mark, he just gave up. Like that was it. He went through a few options. All right, that's it. Well, no, that's not it. There's a lot more. So for those who are spiritual seekers, they should seek until they actually find what they're looking for and not give up. And that's an important principle, to not give up until we found what we're looking for. And the fact is, there are answers to our questions. It's not that there's no answers. There are answers. There's actually an answer to every meaningful question. Every important question. There's actually an answer, a satisfying answer. Of course, one time somebody asked our spiritual teacher here, Srila Prabhupada, who's the form here, his Murti form. They asked him one time, because, he was a big guru in the world, so they challenged him. They said, oh, how many windows are in the Empire State Building? Kind of like, oh, this is a very important question. How many windows are in the Empire State? So that was a challenge. And he had a very super sharp mind. So not that it was like he was getting stumped or something all the time. Not at all. Quite the opposite. So immediately he responded. He said, how many drops of water are there in a mirage? That was his answer. So in other words, this question, okay, how many, maybe I'm sure if you look it up, right, how many, windows are in the Empire State, you probably find it out, but how essential is that to us, the human, the real problems that we're facing? How essential is that? It's not essential. So, so in conclusion, we should, it's a free world, you could do whatever you want, but at least in my humble opinion, that if we are spiritual seekers, then continue to seek. And we'll see that all the answers are there. And aside from all the answers are there, because that's actually not good enough, to tell you the truth. If you ask me all the questions you have, and I answer you according to, and you're very satisfied by the answers, still, that's not good enough, because we still need to be happy. So not only are all the answers out there, but all the happiness is also out there, we could say, in here, internally within us, the spirit. So, all right. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Anything you'd like to say? I told this one kind of last year, or maybe the year before that, so I thought I'd tell it again, and many of you weren't here, and I thought it was kind of amusing. So, at least to myself. Hopefully to somebody else. Yes.
Hello, thank you for that. You said don't stop searching until you find.
Yes.
And you give the example of him going to churches and colleges and gurus and stuff, and you in your position of, for lack of a better term, authority and stature in this temple, do you still search other religious traditions or spiritual traditions in addition to this, or do you consider yourself totally found?
All right. I was going to say something, but it's not bad, but I don't think it's exactly appropriate for the audience. I was laughing to myself, but I'll tell you afterwards. But I will say something.
No, you can't say that.
Why? No.
It's already out there.
No, I'm going to... Anyways. But, no, I'm gonna answer the question, but just, anyways. So, well, there's a point where, like one time, a young man in San Francisco. This is the hippie days. I don't know if there's any real hippies anymore, but anyways, there used to be. But so Srila Prabhupada, the founder of the Hare Krishna movement, he was driving in a car with someone, and this man started to say, "Oh, I studied this, I studied that, I'm studying this, I'm studying that," and he kind of went through this whole list of what he's doing. And then our spiritual teacher said, he said, "Oh, you know that at some point, just looking, it becomes kind of more of a, you could say, entertainment rather than an actual search, right? Because there's a difference between just kind of entertaining ourselves. Like, for example, someone could come to this, they could be taking a world religions class in SDSU or UCSD or wherever, and they could come into this temple room, and they could see it in different ways. Maybe it's like kind of entertaining or something like that. But there's a difference between just entertaining ourselves and actually searching, right, for spiritual answers, for spiritual happiness, for spiritual truths. So in the case of myself, I have a little story about myself, which, anyways, I'm not going to get into the whole thing because it's take too much time, but I was searching. I grew up here in San Diego, and I was going to different temples and churches and this place and that place and different places, and I was doing kind of compare and contrast. I would sing with different groups, and I would speak to different groups, and so I was searching. And then I was also simultaneously going to these other places, and I was also coming to this temple. So what I found is that whatever was at the other places I went to was here. And I found more as well. What can I say? I found more. And what did I find more of? Well, I found more of satisfactory answers to my questions. And aside from satisfactory answers to my questions, the spiritual happiness was more, it was more concentrated. It was more concentrated. And I thought about that over the years, and I was thinking, oh, why is it more concentrated? Another is more intense, the spiritual happiness. And I thought that one reason is that the persons I was associating with at the temple here, they were very sincere and very serious in their spiritual practices. And they were the ones conveying the whole practice to me. They were teaching me, how to meditate, how to chant on, the beads, and just, teaching me. And in their association, because they were so sincere, the spiritual experience was that much more concentrated. So in other words, who we associate with could change everything. So anyways, I was searching, and I kind of decided on this, as you could see. But although I found, what I was looking for, and yeah, I found what I was looking for. I still, I had to speak at a high school, and I gave like a world religions class there, and then they gave me a book by this person. His name's Saint Augustine. Anyways, so I accepted that book, and I read it, and it's very good. Many good points there. So I do read other books, and it's not that I've closed myself off to the rest of the world. I read other things as well. Okay. Does anybody have any other?
Yep. So why did you choose this temple and not the one in L.A. or
Well,
one in India?
that's easy to say because
it's your
this
hometown, man.
This one's better, right?
It's
I'm
a big
just
world
joking.
out there.
I'm just joking.
And
no offense to L.A. I know.
And do you think you could beat Tukaram in mixed martial arts?
Can I beat Tukaram in mixed martial arts? No way. Tukaram will snap me in half in 1 minute or less. Tukaram's our temple president in Laguna Beach. So he used to be a UFC fighter. You could tell kind of by looking at him too. He's kind of strong, and he actually taught all of his sons how to defend themselves and have a little fun. But yeah, I things naturally happen in our life, and that's, of course, it could be interpreted different ways, but the positive things that happen in our life that happen naturally, that's that's what happened to me. It was a positive, natural thing. I grew up here in San Diego. I visited this temple when I was 17 years old. I was visiting for a year. I was, liking all of the meditation and the people and this and that. And then one of my monk friends who I became friends with, there's many monks here living at the time. There also still is. But he said, why don't you try it out for 3 months, see how you like it. So I did that. And then I just stayed, and 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, 15 years now. So it was just a natural step. So that's why I picked this temple. They haven't kicked me out yet. So, all right. Any last question or comment? You're pointing to someone. Can I belay? Okay. All right. So, yes, thank you all for attending the Krishna Lounge. We have this every Thursday, so feel free to stop by as much as you like. We're also open every day, so you could stop by other times as well. Now we'll serve the dinner. So, yeah, if you go through this, if you walk this way and then through the hallway, there's restroom facilities if you need them. And so they'll pass out the dinner now. And if you like, you could take the dinner here in the temple, or you could take it to go, whatever you like. All right, thank you very much. Hare Krishna.